Let me ask this question as we get started. Have you ever disagreed with anybody?
Yes.
I know it seems basic. Maybe it was like about where to go to eat. Maybe it was about what time to leave. Maybe it was about like where to go on vacation. Maybe it was something like really simple. And you knew like, okay, we disagree and it's not that big of a deal and we can kind of just get past it. Maybe it was a bigger thing. Maybe it was like, what kind of car should we buy? Or like, should we buy a house? Or should we save money or should we spend money? Maybe it was like a bigger thing. Maybe it was with your spouse. Maybe it wasn't. I mean, Kim and I have never disagreed about anything. It's been great over the past couple years. That's a lie, by the way, but it's been plenty of times where we disagreed. I mean, all of life, every relationship I had, I think I've had disagreements in. And what I really want to lean into is this: like, if you ever disagree with somebody to the point that it began to like wreck you on the inside, not that it was just like, maybe it was something as simple of where to go to eat or like what movie to watch or to go to the movies or not, and you knew just by the way things went down and some of the things that were implied or the inflections in the voice that were used, like you knew this is going to mess with me later. Like, this is not resolved. And we might be sitting at the movies together or we might be eating a meal across the table from each other, but we are definitely not on the same page because I am messed up internally. I'm overthinking this. I'm worried about it. I don't know what the solution is. Maybe it was something deeper. Maybe it was buying a house or proposing and getting married or when to have kids or how to discipline those kids. Maybe it was something that really could be more life-altering, but you know that somewhere inside your soul you are not at rest because of this argument or because of this disagreement or because of something that's gone down. And I want to lean into this morning, really. Have you ever been in those moments when you knew you were right? I don't mean like, I know I'm right, like they're wrong, they're stupid. I mean like, I know I'm right. I know this is the right way to do it. I've been there before. I've had the situation happen. I know what's best. And other people don't seem to agree. This morning is about how to have courage when you trust God, but other people around you don't. It's a tough thing. It's a tough moment. So over the past couple of weeks, we've looked at a couple of different situations where we can trust God. One, the first week was how to trust God when we don't know all the details. And basically how it starts is that God calls this guy Joshua, and he says to Joshua, hey, Joshua, the guy you've been following around named Moses, he's dead. Don't worry about burying him. Don't even worry about finding him. I'll take care of Moses. You're in charge. Lead the people starting tomorrow. Go. But God, what about, nope, I'm not answering any of those questions. Just go. And Joshua gets challenged to become a leader, and we see him address his fear and embrace an opportunity and step into something new that God's calling him to. And then as that leader, a few chapters later in the book of Joshua, we see this big thing come up where God says, hey, Joshua, I want you to go overtake the city of Jericho. And Joshua says, okay, I'll prepare for battle. And he says, yeah, prepare all your warriors, but let me tell you how to prepare them. You tell all your warriors to go march around the city and take the priest with you, by the way. Not really ready for fighting, but you take the priest with you. And for 6 days, you just march around the city once a day. And then on the 7th day, you march around it 7 times. And at the end of that, shout and blow the trumpets, and the walls are just going to collapse, and you're going to go overtake the city. And Joshua's like, well, I need more details. And God's like, well, those are all the details. And so last week we talked about how do we have the courage to trust God when we get all the details, but they just don't seem to make any sense. And we talked about 4 different times in life when we need to learn to trust God. And you can go back and listen to that message if you want to. But this morning is how do I trust God? How do I trust his presence when the people around me don't seem to agree with me? And we asked the question over the past couple weeks, how do I trust God's presence? And it all comes back to this. What would you do if you were 100% confident that God was with you? And your situation's different. Maybe you got a disagreement going on with somebody and you're trying to figure out how do I resolve it. Now, here's what I'd ask you. What would you do in that relationship? What would you say? How would you communicate it? What would it look like? What would you do if you were 100% confident that God was with you this morning? Do that and trust that he'll be with you. That's how you trust his presence. You act as if he's with you and God promises to be with you. And so that would be the encouragement. That's the thing we've been talking about. But we're going to take a look at Joshua. And if you already have your Bible and you're one of those guys who already has it out, which is great, we're not actually going to be in the book of Joshua. We're going to be in the book of Numbers. We're going to take a look back at Joshua as a follower, not as a leader. Because here's what I'm convinced of. Becoming a great leader starts by being a great follower. Becoming a great leader starts by being a great follower. I'm convinced that the birthplace of leadership is obedience. It's not in demanding a role of leadership. As a pastor here at Element, we've had some people over time, as a leader in different areas in life, as a follower in different areas of life, I've had people come up to me and tell me, I'm a leader, I need to be in charge, I'm ready to go. And those are great conversations, for me at least, because I immediately know two things. One, you're not going to be a leader, here at least. And two, it's about to get really uncomfortable, because it's always followed up with, well, that's just not the way leadership works at Element or in life. And I've had a lot of tough conversations with people that start with, show me you can be a great follower before I make you a leader. Because part of being a great follower is learning to honor the leadership above you. When I was a youth pastor, the best advice I ever got was learn to honor the leader above you, whether you agree with him or not. Because there are times, I said it already, in every relationship where we disagree. But how you choose to honor the leaders above you will define how you lead when you actually get the position. Are you faithful? Are you encouraging? Are you honoring? You may not realize it. But as a follower, you set up a culture for how you want to lead. And so I'd encourage you to recognize the statement that becoming a great leader starts by being a great follower. But we're going to take a look at Joshua as a follower. And here's how this story goes so far. I'm going to catch you up for the beginning of Numbers 13, and then we're kind of going to go through the end of Numbers 13 and the beginning of chapter 14. Here's what's going on. Moses knows we need to go into the promised land. God has promised us this land that's across the Jordan River, and we're going to go there. We're going to take it over. It is ours. He's already given it to us. We got to go still do it, but we know that God has given us this land. But I need to know, Moses says, I need to know what's over there. God told us to go, and I trust God, but I want to know, is the land fertile? We need to be able to grow some crops. We need to be able to feed our sheep. We need to be able to take care of things. Is the land going to provide what we need? Do I need to bring anything extra? And so he calls together these 12 people, and it's one from every tribe of Israel, and he says, listen, I want you to go over there, and I want you you're a spy on their land, but you're going to be friendly. And you're going to go scout it out. I need you to go tell me, what is it like? What is the soil like? What is the people like? What are the cities like? Go get a good idea and then bring back a report. And we're going to look at that. Here's how it starts. Numbers 13, verse 17, he says, Moses gave the men these instructions to go explore the land. Go north through the Negev into the hill country. See what the land is like. Find out whether the people living there are strong or weak, few or many. See what kind of land they live in. Is it good or is it bad? Do their towns have walls or are they unprotected like open camps? Is the soil fertile or is it poor? Are there many trees? Do your best to bring back some samples of crops that you see. It happened to be the season for harvesting ripe grapes. So it's just this idea of go scout it out. As the leader, I can't leave right now, but I'm sending you, Joshua, one of the 12, to go and get a good idea of what it's going to be like. How easy is it going to be to take? Can we just ask these people to move? Or are we going to be preparing for battle? What do we need to do? So they went up and explored the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob. Don't stress about all the names of these cities. I don't even know how to pronounce them. Just say them quick, say them confident. Everybody thinks you know how to do it, right? So going north, they passed through the Negev and arrived at Hebron, where Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, all descendants of Anak, lived. The ancient town of Hebron was founded 7 years before the Egyptian city of Zoan. You can look that up. I have no idea what that's talking about. In any case, when they came to the valley of Eshcol, they cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes so large that it took 2 of them to carry it on a pole between them. In other words, there's good crops here. We're going to be able to eat, right? I like big grapes, and I cannot lie. That's what they're taking back to their people to say, you want a sample of what the crops look like? You want to know if it's going to be good? Think about it. We get to go back with a good report. It's going to be well worth it to move. We're out here in the wilderness. There's manna falling from the sky. we've eaten the same thing for the past 40 years. Good fruit is on the horizon. They got some pomegranates, they got some figs, they're ready to bring back samples. So after exploring the land for 40 days, they returned to Moses, Aaron, and the whole community of Israel at Kadesh in the wilderness of Paran. They reported to the whole community what they had seen and showed them the fruit that had been taken from the land. Now, I want you to just imagine for a moment you're Joshua. You're not the one who's about to speak and actually give the report, but you're one of the spies who went in. You got to see it, you got to experience it, you got to take it all in. You met some people, you probably shook some hands, you stole some fruit. And now you're coming back ready to give a good report of this is well worth it. Let's go. That's where Joshua is in this moment. And when they walk in, can you imagine, like if we walked in with a cluster of grapes, I mean, even if I did it today, right? If we walked in with a cluster of grapes and it took me and Francis walking out here on stage carrying them on a pole in between us was the only way we could carry the cluster of grapes, I think everybody would be shocked. I mean, in 2018, we'd assume it's like genetically mutated. But in that time, it's like, we don't even understand how that's possible. I want some of those grapes, right? I like big grapes. In any case, that's what's going on. And then they start to give the report. We entered the land that you sent us into to explore, and indeed, it is a bountiful country, a land flowing with milk and honey. Here's the kind of fruit it produces. At this point, it's like oohs and ahs. But the people living there, they're powerful. Their towns are large and fortified. We even saw giants there. The descendants of Anak. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, they live in the hill country. The Canaanites live along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea and along the Jordan Valley. I feel like if I'm Joshua in that moment, if you're Joshua in that moment, this is like the moment when you walk in on a group project expecting your speaker to say what script you gave them and they just went off book. And now you're associated with it. And it's like, I thought we were good, and you just created fear. And I don't think necessarily the guy's trying to create fear. I mean, he is afraid. But it's like, hey, here's the good stuff, but let me tell you everything that's negative. And I'm going to focus my energy there because it's going to be really scary if we actually go in there. And Caleb, who was with Joshua, tried to quiet the people as they stood before Moses. He said, let's go, take the land. We can certainly conquer it, but the other men who explored the land with him disagreed. We can't go up against them. They're stronger than we are. So they spread this bad report about about the land among the Israelites. Not only did they walk up to your leaders and tell them, I don't think this is a good idea, after you know this is what God's called you to do, not only are they going a different direction and leading people a different direction, but now they're going to the whole nation and beginning to spread rumors. It's like you walked into the meeting or you walked out of a conversation and you're like, that went a totally different direction than what I expected. And you walk to like the soda machine at work and you're like getting a soda, and off in the corner you hear people just spreading more and more discouragement. You're like, what the heck? I thought we had it all together. I thought it was all good. When did it take this hard right turn, and why are you gossiping about it? Here's what they tell the Israelites. The land we traveled through and explored will devour anyone who goes to live there. I love that the land is doing it now. All the people we saw were huge. We even saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. Next to them, we felt like grasshoppers, and that's what they thought too. Now we're assuming other people's thoughts. Beth Moore, a Christian speaker and author, describes fear. She always breaks down fear and says it's just false evidence appearing real. And she does it in a real Southern accent that I can't do. But in any case, Beth Moore constantly talks about fear as just false evidence appearing real. And I begin to think in my own life, and I wonder if it's true for them in that situation, that this is just fear that's like been exaggerated over time in their minds. I wonder if on the day they found the grapes, they were excited, and on the day they saw some people taller than them, they became nervous. And by the time 10, 12 days later they actually got back, a 6-inch height difference became a 6-foot height difference because they were scared and they just weren't sure. Because I know in my life, maybe it's true in yours, that when I'm afraid of something, I blow it up to something far worse than it actually is. And so many times I don't want to address fear and embrace opportunity. I'd rather just let the opportunity pass. I'd rather miss out on what God has for me because addressing the fear is just so unbelievably uncomfortable. And I've dramatized it so much in my head to being the monster that I'm never going to be able to conquer. I don't know if you deal with that. I don't know if in your conversations and in your arguments and in your disagreements, you ever feel like if I address this, if I actually get real about it, it's just going to go wrong. If I tell my boss I'm not comfortable with that, he's probably going to fire me. I'm going to be homeless. My kids are going to be living on the street and we're never going to have a job again. If I go have a conversation with this coworker, I know she's going to gossip. I know it's not going to get better. Everybody at work's going to hate me. I'm never going to be invited to anything again. I'm going to be lonely and die with cats. If I tell my spouse I don't think it's a good idea, he's probably going to leave. She's probably going to find somebody else. If I tell my mother-in-law I'm not coming for Christmas, they're probably not going to buy our kids any presents. And they're going to hate us, and my husband's going to go there anyway. That's just how I function. Because fear has a way of producing false evidence that appears real. And here's the whole thing about this courageous series. If we never address the fear, we never get to embrace the opportunities that are there for us. There is something to be lost when we refuse to address fear. If you don't do it, it won't change. So he's got a situation where the people he went there with, his coworkers, are now spreading lies. And then it gets even worse. Check out this verse. Then the whole community began weeping aloud and cried all night. Their voices rose in a great chorus of protest. I don't have any idea what that looks like. Like, are they chanting all together? I'm not really sure. But they're protesting against Moses and Aaron. If only we had died in Egypt. If only we had died in slavery. If only we had just stayed in bondage. Or even if we could just die out here in the wilderness. Why is the Lord taking us to this country only to have us die in battle? Our wives and our little ones are going to be carried off as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt? They plotted among themselves, let's choose a new leader and go back to slavery. You say it just says Egypt. Yeah, well, they just spent all this time in Egypt, over 400 years in slavery. How weird is it, but how true is it for us that there's moments in life where we would choose to return to bondage instead of move towards freedom because we don't know how freedom's going to turn out? How many times do we do that? Where we choose to stay bound by something that has no weight over us. We choose to give it power. It's like we have broken chains that we just choose to hold on to so we can allow them to weigh us down, because if I let them go, I don't know what that freedom's going to feel like. If somebody sees me not carrying chains, then maybe they're going to ask me to carry something else, and I don't know how to do that. And we just leave ourselves bound for nothing. That's what they're doing. Like if I'm Joshua, I'm like, you're all stupid. What a dumb thing to say. I'd rather be enslaved than be free and have to maybe fight a battle. I'd rather be bound up than be courageous. That doesn't make any sense. You didn't even see the land. How dumb are you? Like that's me. That's not Joshua. We're going to look at how Joshua responds and hopefully learn a better way to respond than maybe how I'd do it. But what do you do when the people you work alongside have given into fear? What do you do when the people who you're leading have given into fear? And then it gets even worse. Look at verse 5. Then Moses and Aaron, the leaders you're following, fell face down on the ground before the whole community of Israel. I don't know if that means they gave up or they're begging them to follow them. But either way, it doesn't sound that good. The people I saw the same things I did, interpreted a different way, and I'm not sure how to help them with that. The people who were leading don't trust us anymore because we've just created fear among them. And the men who were following are so tired of leading these people that they've just laid down on the ground. What do you do? Here's one thing I want you to know. If you miss everything else, at least hear this morning. If you don't do anything, your situation won't change. If you don't do anything, if I don't do anything, situation's not going to change. We must, hear me, we must choose courage over fear. There will be opportunity after opportunity that is missed if we do not choose courage over fear. If you do nothing in your workplace will not change. That really annoying person you've been dealing with for the past 10 years is going to be there for another 10. And you go, well, they're getting ready to retire. Great. Guess who's going to get hired in their place? Another really annoying person that you don't want to deal with. Somebody else will fill that void because you're setting up a pattern that says, I don't want to address fear. I don't want to embrace opportunity. I want to just accept whatever happens and just take it for what it is, and I'm just going to be passive about everything and just hope it somehow gets better. Passivity will never lead you to a better life. You've got to choose to be active. You've got to choose to be engaged. It is tough. It will be awkward. It will be full of conflict at times, but it will be worth it. If I'm real, I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that playing video games on my phone would address all the conflict that I have in life. It never has. It helps me escape from it. It helps me not think about it until I put it down. Maybe your escape is video games on your phone. Maybe your escape is another drink. Maybe your escape is another hobby. And you go, I'll just run to something else so I don't have to deal with what makes me uncomfortable. But we're, over the next few minutes, going to learn a few things that we can do in tough situations when we disagree with people. How can we be courageous? What is that going to look like? We learn it from Joshua. Two of the men who had explored the land, Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, tore their clothing. This is a sign of mourning. Right? And then they said to all the people of Israel, the land we traveled through and explored is a wonderful land. The first step we have to do, the first step of being courageous and dealing with the conflict is to remind people of truth. Don't let them be distorted. Don't let them take it out of context. Don't let them put it in their mind in a way that's false evidence appearing real. Help them see the truth. The land is great. Will it be tough? Will it be challenging? Yes. But will it be worth it? Absolutely. Do you remember how big those grapes were? Do you remember the taste of pomegranate? We haven't had anything but manna for years. Your kids have never tasted anything but that nasty food. Now you got variety. You have blessing. You're on the edge of blessing. Don't give up now. Remind them of truth. And then the second thing, the very next verse, if the Lord is pleased with us, He'll bring us safely into the land that He's given us. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. So remind people of truth and then point people to God, because this is what it's saying. We're not alone. Don't forget. God called us, He's sending us, and He's going with us. And I feel like if I'm Joshua, and I'm not saying that this is the exact script that he uses, I mean, it's in quotes, right? This is what they say. But I feel like Joshua in this moment is going, guys, you know how God's moved in our past. Egypt that you just talked about going back to, remember the 10 plagues that God sent because God is more powerful than all of Egypt's gods? Remember how every one of those plagues was a sign from God that He was able to overcome what Egypt was going to throw at him? Remember how He did everything we needed to bring us into freedom? You know how He sends down food from the heavens every day so we're provided for? Don't ever forget. Don't ever lose sight. God is with us. He's called us. He's going before us and coming behind us. There are moments in our lives when we disagree, when we just need to point people back to God. You go, but they don't hold to the same standard. I know. Let me give you one piece of encouragement. If you deal with people who aren't biblical followers of Jesus and you have a disagreement with them, you can still point them to God without quoting Scripture. I can't tell you how many times I talk to people and I do quote Scripture and I don't tell them a verse and reference. And I'll just say something like this. You know, one of the things that I've learned over the past 33 years of my life, that every blessing I've ever received comes in the form of a relationship. And it really comes down to the fact that I need to learn to treat people the way I want to be treated and to care for them and to encourage them and point them back to something so much greater than what we experienced here. You know who I'm quoting? Jesus. But I don't have to say that. I don't have to thump my Bible at somebody. I don't have to attack. I don't have to say, in John 19 it says, because then they've already tuned out. But I've learned to just suggest biblical truth as something that I've learned because it is something I've learned from reading God's word. But you know what that means? When you invite them to Element and they hear it, they go, oh, that's actually coming from someplace biblical. Maybe the Bible isn't as stupid as I thought it was. You're beginning to build credibility in something that they don't see as credible. Point people to God, whether you use his name or not. And then look at the last thing. Don't rebel against the Lord. This is what he says to the people. Don't rebel against the Lord. Don't be afraid of the people of the land. They are only helpless prey to us. They have no protection. The Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. Remember what Joshua 1:8 says? Joshua, do not fear. Be courageous. I remind you, be strong and courageous. Do not fear. This is everything that God has always called him to. But right now, in this moment, he is calling them to action. This right here, if I'm real, is where most of us stop. And it's the reason that most of us don't actually resolve conflict in relationships. We remind people of truth. We'll point people to God, but we refuse to call people to action because that's when it gets awkward. The moment we say to somebody, stop doing what you're doing, start doing something else, that's when things seem to get tough. That's when it seems to get real. The way you're living, partying every weekend, is not the best decision for you, so stop doing it. Well, it's my choice and it's my body. It is, but it's still bad choices and awful results. I have a friend who complains all the time about the life that they live and the situations that they're in and the financial troubles that they have. And most times I don't say anything. Most times I just tune them out. But in moments when I give them truth and I encourage them with what God said and I call them to action, a lot of times I get a response of, I just wanted to complain. And then they say something like this: it's my life, it's my body, I'll do what I want. And I've had to say to some people, and it's been well worth it to say to some people, then stop complaining to me about it. If you don't want to address it, if you don't want to move forward out of it, then complain to somebody else. Because I don't want to hear it. You just need to come to the realization that you chose the position you're in, and you're continuing to choose the position you're in. So be satisfied with that. And some people are, and some people aren't. And they can go complain about me to somebody else, but at least I don't have to listen to it. It might be rude, but it's real. We need to be okay with the awkward. We need to learn to embrace the moments where we call people to action. Guys, I'm going to talk about this next week, so I'm not going to preach on it too much right now, but if we're a church that's all about truth and truth only, we become legalistic. We look down our nose at people. Nobody wants to be part of that church because you constantly feel judged. But if we're a truth that's on the other side and we're all grace where everybody's welcome all the time and there's never anything that's ever wrong and we can't address anything and we can never call anybody to action, then there's no point in being here. It never calls you to anything more. Every single Mother's Day and Father's Day at this church over the past 3.5 years, I've preached a message that calls moms and dads to more. And I've had people ask me, why do you do that? Why don't you just give people a pat on the head? And here's what I'm convinced of. I don't think our people come because they want a pat on the head and the participation trophy. I think our people come and they get up on Sunday morning and they get dressed and they get out of their pajamas and they go to church and they sit there for an hour and they participate in something because they want something better for their lives. And if we just consume ourselves with grace, if you choose to be a person that goes, well, I'm just gracious to everybody, to each their own, 24/7, you're never going to be a person of influence for them. You have to be willing to have the awkward conversation that calls them to something more. We're committed as a church to be built on truth and grace. Not the balance of both, but all of both, all the time. It's got to be both and. You go, Ryan, I've done it. I've listened to you. I've already done this. You didn't tell me anything new. I've reminded people of truth. I've pointed people to God. I've called people to action. And you know what's happened? They didn't listen. What do I do in those moments? Fortunately for you, they don't listen to Joshua either, so we get to see how he responds. The whole community, look at this. The whole community began to talk about stoning Joshua and Caleb. That's my response. You want to call me to action? How dare you? I'd rather kill you. How's that for action? And I'm worried about somebody not texting me back. So here's what I want to give you as we close. These are 3 things that I've learned from reading scripture, from spending time with God, from life experience. Here's a couple things that I want to give you. If they still won't listen in these moments, here's 3 things that we can do. The first one is to seek biblical community. And if I could underline and highlight and bold and box and make sure you do not miss it, biblical is the key word there. We have to seek biblical community. This does not mean I'm frustrated at work, so let me go gossip in the break room and call it community. This does not mean I'm aggravated with my spouse, so let me go find some friends that I can grab some drinks with and tell them how bad my spouse is, and they can tell me how bad theirs is, and we can just complain fest to one another. This is not, well, my boys on Xbox understand my problems, and so let me go tell them all about it and just whine about whatever's going on in my life. No, seek biblical community. You want to know what biblical community looks like? Biblical community reminds you of truth and points you to God and calls you to action. Biblical community does exactly what we just encouraged each other to do for other people. And here's the thing. I'll just be real. As a guy, over the past couple years, it's a struggle to figure out what community looks like. There's a lot of church people that want small groups all the time, and they want the idea of if we can just get together, if we can just spend time with one another, we'll all sing Kumbaya by the end, we'll give each other a hug, and it'll somehow be masterful. And I've never experienced that. I hate singing. I don't want to hug, and just give me some of my own space. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she went to this small group. There's one group going on right now. It's a group of 5 or 6 ladies, and they just get together every other Wednesday night. And every other Wednesday, this group gets together and they spend time together and they pray for one another and they encourage one another. And I followed up with every one of those ladies who's a part of that group after the first one, and here's what they said. Every single one of them said the same exact thing. It was awesome. In the first hour, we all cried together. We hugged it out. It was exactly what I needed. Thanks so much for setting it up. I have never experienced that. And if I did, I would be weirded out. I don't want to experience that. Here's what I want as a man. I want to be able to go out on my boat for 4 hours with you, us say maybe 50 words to each other, and be able to remind each other of truth, point each other to God, and call each other to a little bit more action, and then follow up in a couple weeks and see how that goes. See, what I'm learning about men is that most of the time when men build community, they do it through shared experiences. It's working on a truck and having a conversation while you do it. It's fishing together, it's crabbing together, it's spending time doing something together. I'm not saying guys can't build community by reading a book together and like sitting down and talking about their feelings. I'm just saying that most of the men that I've experienced in life and who I am, that's just not what I need. But I do need community. And I do need biblical community. And so I've been searching for the past couple years for a great men's retreat, a great guys' weekend. How can we get away? How can we do something that's fun, that's enjoyable, that's like manly? We can start fires and roast pigs and laugh together and like have cigars and a great time and enjoy the presence of one another. We can build some kind of community over that 3 days, and we can be closer to God for it. How do we do that? So I'm excited to announce something. I found one. One camp that I think is worth going to, that I think is worth exploring, that I think is worth giving a shot. And so this October, we're going to do our first ever guys retreat. Check out this video for more details.
So a couple years ago, I and some buddies of mine were in a place just like this. We've been riding our bikes all day, having all kinds of problems. And as we were around the campfire, we were reflecting on how something inside of us had come alive by problem solving, by stretching ourselves. And so we said, what would happen if we were able to take what we experienced on a bike trip to a camp setting where guys had adventure, unpredictable things, problems happened, and bonding took place. And so out of that, Man Camp was born. We find that we get to know each other a little bit better, we get to know God a lot better, and we really get in touch with that primal male inside of us. We need to get back to our roots. Men from the beginning of time have been in environments like this, and we're creating an environment for you and the friends you bring to come here. I'm right here in land that we have bought. The very first time we've been on this 435 acres to actually build something, to build into you, to build into your friends, to build into a whole new fraternity of men that needs Man Camp. Something is dead inside of us that needs to be brought back to life. And God needs to get a hold of us. For some of us, for the very first time. For others of us, it needs to be rekindled. Get every friend, every guy you know, they will thank you for it. Push yourself. When's the last time you pushed yourself? When's the last time you tried something new? When's the last time you had to stretch? That's what Man Camp is for. You're going to find on the other end of it, you're going to be a better version of yourself. You're going to be a better man. You're going to be closer to God.
I was sold with a tagline that said beer, camping, and Jesus. But here's what it really comes down to. Brian Tome, the pastor of Crossroads Church, the fastest growing church in the nation last year, said we want to invest in men to the point that their church bought 435 acres outside of Cincinnati, where their church is located, to say we want to do Man Camp on a regular basis so men can be more like Jesus and get to know one another. I'm convinced with every guy that I've talked to, their interest that they want to be a part of it, I'm convinced that it will be well worth your time to go. It's inexpensive. It's worth the investment. So let me help you understand how you can go. Go to elementchurchlaurel.com. If you're under 18, you can't go. That's just the facts, all right? So elementchurchlaurel.com. You go, well, where's the slash? I don't want to confuse you with a slash, so I just made it the homepage. On the homepage, you will see something that says, do something epic. It'll talk about making fires and roasting pigs and laughing together and sharing malted beverages and BYO, pretty much everything. You can watch that video again. You can send that video to somebody. All that's on the homepage. But at the bottom of the homepage, you're going to find a link that says, sign me up. Click it. And this is getting real complex here. Click the link. And when you do, you're going to find a really short questionnaire from me. It's going to ask you for your name, your phone number, your email address, and then it's going to ask you this question. I would prefer to go to Man Camp by driving my car with some other people in it, riding in a different car with some people in it, or hitchhiking. You can take one of the first two options. I mean, you could do the third. I don't think it's the best, but it's an option that's there if you want it, all right? And then at the bottom, there's this lovely button. It says submit. Click it. And when you do, there's going to be a thing that pops up from me that says, thanks for taking the leap. And you can like read through all of it, but there's a link in there that says, now go to Crossroads website and actually buy your ticket. And for all of you who do exactly what I would do and close that down as soon as I've bought it, because I don't need to read some thank you message, there's another link on the webpage right next to sign me up that helps you go buy your ticket. You follow that link, you fill out their form. It's longer than ours, but it'll be worth it. You pay $60, at least as of last week. The ticket's $60 for the whole weekend. They're going to send us more details as we get closer, and you're going to split gas with whoever you ride in a car with. So maybe at the end of the weekend, you've spent $100 and bought a couple meals while you're on the road. I'm convinced that you're well worth that investment. We had a guy in our church who serves on our teams. He's been here since day one. I showed him that video last week as we were sitting at lunch, and he turned to his spouse and said, I want to go. And she was like, yeah, it's fine. But he turned to me after that and said, 2 years ago, I'd never made that investment in myself. Spending money on me just wasn't something that I would do, but I want you to understand something. Spending $100 on yourself for that weekend to be a better man will make you a better father, a better husband, and a better follower of Jesus. It's well worth the investment. I will not pay it for you because I believe you can invest in yourself, and it'll be well worth it. If they still won't listen to you, seek biblical community. Secondly, have integrity. Real quick on integrity. I don't have a video for this one. Integrity just comes down to this. As far as it depends on me, I'm going to follow God. It's not about my preferences, but it is about my convictions. And so I'm not going to compromise my convictions. My coworker can lie in his sales pitch. I won't. My coworker can manipulate something. Somebody else can do what they want. I'm not going to compromise on those things. As far as it depends on me, I'm going to do what God says. And then the last thing you're going to do, you seek biblical community, you have integrity, and you honor everyone. And let me be real clear. I'm being specific. You honor the people you disagree with. It is not following Jesus to go gossip about them. It is not honoring them to go talk about all the ways you disagree and all the ways their plans are going to fail, to stir up trouble. That's not going to help them. It's not going to help you. And it's going to build a culture around your leadership that is one of lacking honor, treating people as common. And so if you find yourself, after this morning, having taken the steps that Joshua took and still having people disagree with you, seek biblical community because we need to be reminded of truth when other people are compromising it. We need to have integrity and come to the conclusion that as far as it depends on me, I'm going to do what God says. And lastly, we're going to honor everyone. We can disagree, but we can disagree respectfully. We can speak up, but we do it in a way that's honorable. We don't assume people's motives. We address their actions. We give truth full of grace. See, at the end of the day, it's what God did for us. Like there's a moment when Jesus had to be courageous. It was the moment when he was in the garden. He knows that he's about to die. He knows that it's all about to end. He doesn't want to go to it. In fact, he begs his friends, just please stay up with me because I want to share this moment with you. I want to enjoy our last conversation. And he walks off and prays, and his friends pass out. And he begs God, God, I don't want to go through the cross. If there is any other way, if it's possible at all for you to somehow redeem humanity without me going through the pain and humiliation of what I'm about to experience, then God, you do it. And God tells him 3 different times, there's no other way. And Jesus gets up, and he addresses his fear, and he embraces the opportunity ahead of him. You go, his opportunity was getting on the cross. His opportunity was being the Savior of the world. The one that gets to be seated at the right hand of God because of his sacrifice that he made. But he didn't do it lacking courage. He didn't do it giving into fear. he did it by addressing fear and embracing the opportunity ahead of him. And I wonder, what would our lives be like? What would our church look like? What would our community look like if we became a group of people that said, look, it's going to be tough and it's scary, but we'll be men and women of courage, that will address our fears and embrace our opportunities, because God has so much more for us. Let's pray. God, I thank you for who you are. Lord, I thank you for a short series that reminds me that as a leader and as a follower and as a man of God, I need to be okay with addressing fear and embracing opportunity. God, it's the reminder that we have such a better way to live than just how we experience life today. God, I'm convinced that our community would be completely different if we would be the men and women of courage you call us to be. So God, I pray this morning that you would give us boldness and faith and courage to trust your presence, to even in the moments when we can't see you, in the moments where we don't hear you, to ask ourselves the question, what would we do if we were 100% confident that you were with us? And then God, give us the strength to do it. It's in your name I pray. Amen. There's a couple people who are about to serve communion. It's a tray that's going to be passed down your row with a stack of 2 cups. One of them has a juice, one of them has a cracker, and it represents the body and blood of Christ that he shed on that cross so that we could have the freedom that we have now, the freedom to be able to connect with the God of the universe because of the sacrifice he made. You can take it as a reminder. We encourage everybody to take it as a reminder that Jesus steps into our mess and gives us the courage to step out of ours. And so I'd encourage you to take that, and the band's going to lead us in one final song.